Welcome back to From the Bridge. I'm the Captain Rick Jones, and today we will continue our series on the 7 C's of new business pitching. So today we'll discuss communication, plus maybe the lack thereof, from the soapbox and a new place to eat on the road with Rick. Plus Lee Douglas, the general manager of Gator Sports Properties for Learfield Sports at the University of Florida, will be my guest talking college sports and more. So don't change the channel. Let's start now from the bridge. We have been discussing the 7 C's of effective new business pitches. So far, we've done 5 of these C's, namely, number 1, competency. You got to actually know what you're doing. Number 2, context. You got to know what you're doing in terms of what they want you to accomplish. What do they want to see happen? Number 3, which I always feel like is the most important, you have to challenge them. You have to challenge the way they think. You have to look at things differently than the way they're looking at things. Number 4, creative. You've got to be creative. And number 5, in order to really get anything done, you've got to have collaboration. So today is all about that 6th C, communication. Because should you actually win the business, communication will become essential for account management and success for you and your client. So we suggest that you communicate effectively during the pitch period. So how do you do that? Firstly, you acknowledge and communicate regularly in the pitch process with all of the client contacts. Now, usually one person from the client will be designated as the point person. I like communicating both with that person and also copying, if I'm using email, everyone at the client involved in the selection process. I like doing this weekly at a minimum. Secondly, you ask a lot of questions, either on conference or phone calls or through an electronic portal the client has established. And then you let everyone know that you've submitted a question or questions to the portal. Once you submit materials, then you should follow up and communicate with the point person to make sure that they have actually received your materials. That's happened to me in the past, where things get lost. They go to spam, or they get lost in the mail, or they're stuck in the mailroom someplace if I've overnighted things. So you always need to make sure they've received them. Then, of course, the pitch, which is hopefully face-to-face, but unfortunately, a lot of Zoom pitches these days. The pitch is all about communication. I never bring anyone to a presentation who does not have an appropriate speaking role. You don't want to have window dressing with your staff. You want to make sure your staff actually has something relevant to say. In the presentation, I like to firstly tell them what I'm going to tell them. Secondly, then I tell them. And thirdly, I tell them what I told them. I have a sign in my office that says, "A confused mind always says no." Communication prevents confusion, because confusion is one C word that won't help us. We'll close the series on the 7 C's of effective new business pitches next week with our final C, chemistry. My guest today is Lee Douglas. Lee and I first met when he worked for the Atlanta Hawks, and he's now doing amazing work at the University of Florida. We'll talk to him today about the state of college sports and things he is doing differently coming out of the pandemic. Let's welcome Lee to the bridge. Hey, Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Rick.
Well, I appreciated you stopping by the other day when we had our tailgate tour down for the Alabama game. And I tell you what, the atmosphere in Gainesville that day was unlike anything I'd ever seen. My wife is from Live Oak, a little bitty town not too far north from Gainesville, and my father-in-law went to the university, so we've spent a lot of time in Gainesville and been to a lot of Gator football games, but that day was unlike anything I had seen.
Well, it was electric, Rick, to say the least. One of the deficiencies in the SEC schedule is the fact of the way in which the East plays the West, or vice versa. And with the rotating bases, a case of Alabama. I mean, they're only coming to Gainesville the way it's set up right now, every 10 to 12 years. So, it's special in its own right, but obviously the history and heritage of Alabama, and then what the feeling was with the Gators, and also coming out of COVID, people excited to get back to going to live sporting events and stuff. It was kind of the perfect storm for just an exciting day.
Well, we'll get back to talking a little bit about some of the things that I saw that day and some of the things you're doing, but I always like to start with my guest with, kind of the journey. Where did you grow up? Where you went to school? What was your first job?
Well, I was born and raised in Atlanta. Did live elsewhere early at the ages and stuff, but from sixth grade on, my family moved back to Atlanta. So it's a product of DeKalb County High Schools.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Lakeside. So
I went to Avondale. I went to Avondale.
Very familiar.
We were big rivals with Lakeside during that era.
Yeah. And of course, growing up, from your standpoint, the biggest rival around that we followed was the Gator Avondale matchups and stuff.
I'm reading Bill Battle. We had Bill Battle on a few weeks back, and he's got a new book called The Master's Plan out, and it was amazing. So many of the guys that played for him at Tennessee were guys that played at Decatur or Avondale High School. I had forgotten that it was kind of a DeKalb County pipeline up to Knoxville. We had an All-American center named Chip Kell that played at Avondale, and then he had the Chadwick boys that had all played at Decatur. And so you're right, the Avondale-Decatur rivalry was pretty significant during that era.
Yeah. So anyway, Rick, I graduated with a degree in industrial management, which has now been renamed to the College of Management, and didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I really was interested and fascinated with business. Took a job with a bank in Jackson, Mississippi, in the management training program. So I spent 2.5 years in that, getting exposed to all the various aspects of banking. Always had a desire that I wanted to go get a graduate degree. So I came back to Atlanta and got my MBA in finance from Georgia State. And interesting, getting a degree in corporate finance, what it really taught me was I didn't want a job in corporate finance. And so I looked in the want ads in the Journal-Constitution, and I saw that the Atlanta Hawks were advertising for commission salespeople to sell season tickets for the Hawks. And it was a 6-month job, and I thought that, this would be perfect, marry my passion for sports and being employed. And then while I really tried to figure out what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life, and I turned a 6-month job with the Hawks into a 27-year career. So I was blessed and fortunate to be a part of a great organization and to be able to grow, personally and professionally, and be a part of the growth as far as sports and particularly the NBA is concerned. So that was really where I got my beginning, Rick.
Well, you think about that era of the NBA, you really did see what I call the turning of the tide. David Stern's leadership, great players, great coaches, finally getting the television piece right. I can remember as a young person when the NBA finals were tape delayed, at night. And, people look at me like I'm nuts, but that era, it really hadn't happened yet. And then suddenly, you get, great players like, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, so many others that came in during that era. And it really, I think, changed the whole fabric of the NBA. And you were right on the cutting edge of all that.
I was there, not to age myself, but I began with the Hawks in 1978. So at that time, the NBA was faced with a number of problems, a number of issues. They had just merged with the ABA. So teams like, Indiana and San Antonio and Denver and stuff were folded into the league. But it really was beset with a lot of image problems and things that they needed to address. And David Stern came on as commissioner. And really, I had the opportunity firsthand to see what a visionary and what a master CEO he was, and how he took that league, how he addressed the problems head on, and really turned it into the global enterprise that it is today. And it still has a mission to grow the sport globally. You see him doing a lot of stuff in Africa now. They do some stuff in China and India. And, and they also really have I think, a good social conscience in the fact that they facilitate conversation. And that's what social conscience should be all about. It's not saying, hey, this is the way you should think. It's just the fact that, you ought to think and you ought to talk about it. And so there's a lot of things about the NBA that I still admire from afar.
Well, there's certain things that he did that when you look back were really pioneering. I mean, number one, he orchestrated the Dream Team that allowed our best players to play in the Olympic Games, which really was a facilitator for the global growth of the game. And you see today the results of that. So many tremendous players that came out of Europe and other places because they grew up saying, hey, I want to be like that. Secondly, he formed the WNBA. I mean, he was, women's sports before women's sports were cool. He also had, pioneered the salary cap issues where he, sat down with the players and said, let's become, financial partners in this thing, and let's grow the pie and you'll benefit from the pie. And I think that kind of got him to change some of the issues that they had, before he got there or in his early days. At one point, I think cocaine was just out of control in the NBA, and there was just a lot of negative images. But once he got players to understand you can be a true partner in this along with ownership, I think then it really changed. And then like you said, they were doing socially conscious things maybe long before it became in vogue.
Yeah, well, I think that off of it, the benefit of the salary cap was one, to not only grow the league, but also to get rid of the aspect of the disparity between major markets and minor markets, or high revenue and low revenue, that where it put the focus and the attention upon ownership, management, and leadership, and that it didn't matter whether you were in New York or whether you were in Oklahoma City, whether you were in San Antonio, you had a legitimate chance to compete for a championship if you did all the right things. And that made and resulted into a much, much, much better product.
Well, today's show is a lot about communication, and David Stern was a great communicator. I mean, you didn't always like the message. Sometimes he could be pretty brutal about some of the things that he did, but he had a vision, and he wasn't going to deviate from the vision of where he thought the league would go. And other people, it was kind of like get in line or get out of the line. And he led, I think, so many changes. Now, when you left the Hawks, did you go directly to Learfield?
No, I didn't. I ran my own consulting practice out of Atlanta for about 7 years. As would have it, with a lot of people, I left the Hawks because of change in ownership, and they brought in new management. And I knew Bernie Mullen and the group. Had worked with Bernie at the NBA, but certainly the right of ownership is to bring in a new management group. I consulted back with that new ownership group for a period of time, but I really utilized my experience and my contacts and stuff. And so I consulted on a number of projects in business and sports for about 7 years, but I always knew that at some particular point, I wanted to get back into something full-time and to lead a team. I enjoy the people and the interaction. I also enjoy the aspect of the winning and losing. When you consult, there's only so much you can do because at the end of the day, it's somebody else's decision. And that's the marriage of our business and sports, is that winning matters. And so whether it's winning a piece of business, or whether it's winning a sponsorship, or whether it's winning on the aspect of just putting smiles on people's faces, that matters. And so I knew that I wanted that at some particular point. Tracy White, who had worked for me for a number of years at the Hawks, and he stayed after the ownership change, took a job with IMG at that particular time. And shortly after he came on board, he gave me a call and he said, "Lee, I know you're looking for something, and this role of GM is interesting and intriguing, and maybe that's something you'd want to take a look at." And he and I began to talk, and we talked about what it would take and what kind of property and everything like that. And I kind of said, "Hey, if a property like Florida came available, I'd really be interested." And about 6 months later, he called me and he goes, "Hey, it's available. Would you be interested?"
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, right?
I know. Yeah. So anyway, I jumped at it, and I had been here for a little over 10 years and have loved every minute of it.
Well, it is one of the iconic collegiate, most prestigious programs out there. Again, I grew up in the South, and I remember the Ray Graves era. I remember when Spurrier actually played at Florida. That's how old I am. And then, you had, tremendous changes when Spurrier came there. And then you had, great leadership from, Jeremy Foley. And the leadership continues after he'd retired. And I'm, again, it's one of those iconic programs. I was fortunate to work with the National Association of Basketball Coaches and got to watch Billy Donovan win back-to-back national championships in basketball, which was, pretty special too during that era. And I always have been a Dan Mullen fan. I thought he did so much with so little at Mississippi State. And but I think, unlike others that followed, Steve and followed Urban, Dan had been on the staff at Gainesville. And I think that made a big difference, that he understood the culture and the expectations of the Gator fans. And I think that's one of the reasons. I think he's one of the best. He's one of the best game day coaches I've ever seen in terms of making adjustments.
He's terrific. Yeah. When I took the job, Rick, interesting, and you talk about the Gator brand, coming from Atlanta, and obviously I grew up, Hawks, Braves, Falcons, University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, big city. So taking a look at coming here, saying, okay, what's it going to be like? At the time, you're going into a state where you have 10 professional sports teams. You've got 3 schools in the Power 5 with Florida, Florida State, and Miami. You have 2 schools with UCF and USF that top 10 in the country in terms of student enrollment. You've got Daytona. You've got the home of PGA. You've got the March PGA Tour. There's just a number of opportunities where people can spend their money in sports. What would it be like? And, as I began to take a look at it, take a look at Scarborough data. There are more people that identify themselves as fans of the Florida Gators than any other sports entity in the state. So it's a great platform. The other that I looked at is that, Rick, what you're well aware of is the Directors Cup, which recognizes the top athletic programs in the country. And the Florida Gators are the only school in the country that has been in the top 10 in every year of the existence of the Directors Cup, and in most years in the top 5. this commitment that Jeremy, you mentioned Jeremy Foley, made to all sports is to say that, if you put Florida on the uniform, you're going to compete at a high level and you're going to compete with integrity. And that certainly has been maintained with Scott Strickland. So it's just a great, great brand that you enjoy getting out representing. And in my world, hey, you like to get out and tell the story, and you just don't want to screw it up.
Well, it's interesting. You go down there and you build a team and you're off to some momentum, and then we get the biggest curveball of our career. We get this thing called COVID-19. I can remember where I was. I literally was at the SEC basketball tournament in Nashville on Thursday morning, sitting in kitchen notes at the Omni Hotel, and I think, all the executives from the SEC, Commissioner Sankey and Charlie Hussey and others we were all in that restaurant that morning when our phones just started blowing up when Mark Emmert made the decision to cancel March Madness. And so, here y'all are, preparing for the spring and looking into the next season. What did you do first with your staff? What was your reaction?
Well, we were all in a state of shock, obviously as to, okay, what does this mean? And then second of all, how long is it going to last? And as we know, hey, this is something that no one in our lifetime had ever faced. And we were subject to a lot of speculation. I mean, is this going to be a 1 month deal? Is it going to be a 3 month deal? No one really thought that it was going to have the longevity that it had. We lost the entire spring. People felt, rightly or wrongly, that, come the fall, they're probably going to be back to normal. Well, as we know, we went another entire school year where COVID had an impact as it related to games and certainly the fan experience and so forth. So all you could do is to try to not only gather as much information as you can, but to from a company aspect, bring people together and just be open, honest, and candid and say, hey, here's what we've got. We have a concern and an interest, first and foremost to our employees. And then second of all, and not in a lesser aspect, to our corporate partners who have made an investment in our product, and how do we handle that in whatever way it is. And again, there was no textbook, there was no formula, there was no anything else like that. It just required communication and empathy, and it was a struggle for all of us. But I'm proud of everybody, not only on our staff but in our industry as to how we handled it.
It's interesting. You go down to Florida working for IMG, and then we go through the merger of Learfield and IMG. So you're now. I tried to describe it to somebody the other day that asked me about multimedia rights. I said it's almost like a franchise model, and that you've got your own business to run at Florida, but you are part of a greater ecosystem. Mm-hmm. When this happened, did you talk to the parent company regularly, and did you talk to other GMs about how they were handling it? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Rick, I think you described it, our situation perfectly, in the fact that we really are a franchise. I operate the Florida Gators and have a P&L and performance in which I am judged, and I'm expected to receive, have the results in. It's same aspect, being part of our larger company. I enjoy the resources that are given to me, not only back of house in terms of legal and accounting, but in terms of research and best practices and so forth. But yes, we had regular communication corporately. We had regular communication with the GMs of the South. And then, there's just some great people that lead, Ryan Gribble at Georgia, Steve Early at Tennessee, and Jim Carabin at Alabama, and others across the area that where individually or collectively, we talked a lot about what was going on.
Yeah, that way you're not kind of left out there on an island by yourself. And I think sometimes even hearing from somebody else that are having the same issues that you're having, it doesn't change them, but it kind of reassures you that
Yeah.
you're not by yourself. And I know this, and you mentioned this earlier about your staff. The first thing that we had to do, and I think you had to do, was just make sure your people stayed safe. I
Yeah.
mean, none of us knew what this was. I mean, it was kind of like this monster that had crept into our lives. And, at that time, you didn't know if you could get it off a desk or if you could get it, off of, riding on a bus it was just so weird. And so, trying to keep your people safe, but at the same time, you had to go back to work. I mean,
It was a trip.
Yeah.
And Rick, from an athletic standpoint here, they went into a lockdown in terms of, hey, offices were closed and people work from home, because obviously, again, what you're looking at is safety first. And as a company, we did the same thing. And all of a sudden everybody's working from home. And so, there's the safety aspect, and there's also the logistics aspect in terms of, all right, how are we going to communicate? What sort of technology is going to be made available to everybody? We talk about Zoom. Our company invested in used a company called Blue Jeans, but we did a lot of video conferences. But we did a lot of stuff where we just staying in touch with people and say, hey, how are you doing? So we all were in it and trying to navigate it together individually and collectively.
Well, the great news is, because of the passion of the Gators and the Gator fans, sponsors, I think you had a certain level of reassurance that sponsors were not going to abandon you and that they were going to come back. But did anything surprise you in that process?
Maybe it was happening so quick, Rick, that I don't know about this surprise, but you know what? It took individual conversations with sponsors to understand what is it during COVID and during this particular time, are their sort of goals and objectives. We have some fans that their goal and objective is to reach out and touch people physically. On-site activation. You did your tour. We have a number of sponsors and stuff that's what it is. And you know what? We use the term red shirt. And if somebody had an agreement and sit there and go, you know what, we're just going to red shirt you for the year. We can't fulfill our end. We're not going to expect on the standpoint here you to fulfill your end. We don't have things in the standpoint here where we can provide value to you. So you know what? We're just gonna redshirt you this year, and we'll pick it up in 21-22, and we'll go from there. We had others on the standpoint here is to say again that the resources that we have as a company to utilize our data, not only FloridaGators.com, but as a company, we've got a number of ways in which we can aggregate data. Who's buying tickets? Who's buying merchandise? Who has been on the website? And so we started to use and develop the ability to use third-party or first-party data in order to reach people on other websites. We know that they're fans of the Gators. They've done these kind of things. So as opposed to just reaching them on FloridaGators.com, we can reach them on ESPN.com. We can reach them on CNN.com or Vanity Fair, or when they're taking a look at cars or shoes or whatever the case is, and deliver messages and impressions. And it means something for those sponsors that have logo rights, that are official partners of the Gators, to be able to reach them in those particular fashions as well. So the idea of pivoting and retooling and reaching out in touch on the standpoint here, we did it. And so it took individual conversations with each particular partner and see if we could navigate our way through, whether it is maintaining a full investment or a partial investment or a red shirt. That's what we did. And we spent a lot of time pivoting and mitigating.
Well, you obviously did a great job of it. When I was there for the Alabama game, I was just blown away by the not only the depth but the breadth of ways sponsors can activate. There was I've never seen so many. I guess maybe is it tailgate guys or is that who you
Yeah,
use? Or, yeah, I mean I've never
yeah,
seen and I think we're seeing what I call a generational change that says, hey, I don't want to lug all that stuff. It's great to have it all provided for me, but I've never seen that many right next to Ben Hill Stadium. Then
yeah.
I went through your fan fest that I thought was outstanding. You had Unilever there that day with one of their
Hmm.
touring things, and you had a number of your sponsors giving away stuff. And then I saw, I think maybe is it in the gymnasium next to the stadium where there was an extra hospitality
Yeah.
program there, and then I saw another hospitality program that you paid to get in. Talk a little bit about all the ways that sponsors can activate around the Gators on game day.
Rick, as you know, that fans and sponsors are looking to do multiple things. And so to be able to do things like your tour, be able to do our Fan Fest area, we're blessed with the Gators that a lot of the national partners, if they're going to do things, they want to align with the Gators. Obviously, Florida, third largest state in the country, and the strength of the Gator brand. So we had the Unilever tour that were there, part of this. We also had the Heisman House that was over on the Rights Union lawn. We had a lot of our local partners, again, that whether they're giving out things or they're doing things in order to collect data. Tailgate guys, they have things at Gator Walk Village there. They also really began their corporate hospitality over and right outside of the Rights Union student building. And, there's actually many or more tents over there. Some of the larger tents and stuff are there. So people are looking for hospitality, for entertainment. People are looking to reach out and touch. And then our own corporate hospitality for our corporate partners is inside the O'Connell Center, right adjacent to Fan Fest with it. So, it's the beauty of sports. It's the ultimate reality show. It's the ultimate escape. It's the opportunity to enjoy and maybe get away from your day-to-day problems and stuff. And for a half a day, come to a college football game. Great situation, great weather, great atmosphere and stuff, and just have a great time. And as I say, at the end of the day, it's about putting smiles on people's faces in whatever way it is, because we know that we have accomplished their objectives and what they're trying to do.
Well, one of the things you do as a general manager of a property like Gator Sports Properties is you manage other people and you select people. Talk a little bit about your staff, what you look for in picking staff, how you communicate with your staff, kind of what your week looks like.
Yeah, this. I certainly developed this philosophy when I was really running the Hawks business, and I've maintained that here. Is that first and foremost, I'm looking for people that have a great attitude, that they have a good work ethic, and they have integrity. Those are things that I can't teach people. You walk in the door. Are you a good person? Do you enjoy being around people? Do you enjoy being a part of a team and success individually and collectively as a team? Those are things that I measure. Now, you've got to have, if you're going to go into sales, you have to have a certain amount of sales aptitude, but I can teach you. I can teach you and develop you over time on how to be a good corporate salesperson. I can teach you on all the elements as it relates to fulfillment and activation and things in that particular regard. I just say, I can't teach you to be a good person. I can't teach you to have great integrity. That's what you bring to the table. But if that's who you are, then you know what? You'll be successful here, and we will be successful here. We do a variety of structured and unstructured communication. In this particular case, coming up here shortly, we'll have a meeting with our activation team and Andrew Cowan and myself will talk to the activation team about what's ongoing. Hey, college, we've got a lot of sports happening. So right now, we've got, in addition to football, we've got volleyball, we've got soccer, and other sports that are taking place. So we're talking about what are all the activities. Tomorrow, we will have a full staff meeting, and we will go over a variety of topics, business and sales, and take a look a little bit into the future and where we are. Then on Wednesdays, we'll have another full meeting, and it's really led by the service team, and they're talking about fulfillment. So we're talking about what's coming up in terms of, we've got men's basketball, women's basketball that's getting ready to begin. Gymnastics will start in January. What elements are we needing from our partners? We're talking about digital and social. What elements are needed, and where are we slotting and everything like in order to fulfill that. So it's that structured as well as the unstructured aspect as to what goes on, so that we can maintain and service at a high level. Because people, this, whether we're talking about the state of Florida on a macro basis, take a look at all those things that I mentioned where people could spend money, or we would just take a look at college in the state, or we taking a look at national people. You know what? They have choices. Nobody needs the Gators. Nobody needs anything as it relates to a particular thing. We earn their trust, and the way in which you earn the trust is that you meet and exceed what they're looking to do, and you have to service at the highest level.
Well, I am reminded about a buddy of mine in New York one year. He said to me, man, SEC football is kind of like a religion, isn't it? I said, oh, no, it's a lot more important than that. I mean, it is a unique entity. The whole tagline, it just means more. I saw a wonderful post of your bride with Tim Tebow. I guess the SEC Nation show was down on your campus. That's another thing people don't realize. If ESPN Game Day decides to show up, or SEC Nation shows up, they take up a lot of real estate.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, and then you got to kind of say, oh, where am I going to put them, and how am I going to do that? But again, it helps promote Gator football in a lot of ways. Talk a little bit about that.
No question. Hey, you know what? All the SEC is blessed and benefit from the launch of the SEC network. And one of the things which the network did, which obviously they're, in with ESPN, and ESPN has developed, honestly, one of the great things around with the Home Depot game day. And they took what was really a traveling studio, and they've turned it into, almost a traveling carnival. But the ESPN's ability to incorporate, whether it's Home Depot, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's their other partners around. Well, when they launched the SEC network, they took that same model, and they said, you know what, if you're an official SEC partner, not only in the aspect that we're going to go on campus, but our partners are going to go with us too. And so they have that as well. The SEC network made a commitment to say, we're going to every campus over the course of the football year. We're not just going to the biggest and the best and the hottest. We're going everywhere because it is the SEC network. And, and it's a big deal. And obviously, when the SEC network comes here, you've got Tim Tebow and you've got Laura Rutledge, who are both Gator grads. And so it's a little bit of a rock show because all you have to do is mention Tebow's name and people go nuts and they flock, and rightfully so. But it's a big deal, and it's an exciting deal. And obviously schools love it because it's showcasing their brand nationwide on one of the biggest platforms around.
Well, let's shift gears one more time. There were so many changes. I told people that in a lot of ways, the pandemic didn't necessarily cause the changes, but it exposed them. And there were so many things that were coming in from, the DEI issues and transfer portal and, financial issues and all that. But the one that seems to maybe affect you guys the most, and I'm interested in your point of view on this, is in name, image, and likeness. We have a law in the state of Florida that's different than laws in other states. We're still waiting on the federal government, hopefully, to make some sort of a consistent ruling, because it's really the wild, wild west right now. And I don't know how anybody's navigating it, to be candid with you. But how has that affected y'all, and what are y'all looking to maybe do around NIL?
Rick, the law in Florida, when it came out and got enacted, it really was trying to set up initially a true separation of church and state. That they did not want the schools, and we view ourselves in this case as an extension of the school. They did not want the schools to come across and to get involved and influence or interfere with the student athletes' right to go out and negotiate deals. And so they didn't want on the standpoint here to say, hey, that somebody interfered and maybe the student athlete didn't get the full amount because the school was exercising some influence or guidance or whatever. So it really kind of started out that it was true separation. Now, I think now as the schools had some conversations with the attorneys and stuff, that they can at least facilitate communication and not act as a broker, but as a facilitator, is to say that, if you're a company and you're interested in student athletes, you can say, all right, you know what, here's whatever, 25 athletes, names and email addresses or whatever and stuff along those particular lines. At this point, I'll tell you, Rick, there hasn't been anything major from a heartburn aspect. It's an education aspect. The biggest things that the schools and the MMR rights holders have is the use of marks and logos. I've described it as to sit there and say, you know what, name, image, and likeness. That's what it's like when you come out of the womb. That's who you are and what you look like. And that's that's kind of what the rights are. Now, if you want to utilize, in our case, the Gator marks and uniforms and everything like that, well, you know what? We need to have a negotiation with the company to be able to take, whether it's Emory Jones or a gymnast or a swimmer or whatever the case is, and utilize that. But if you want to use Emory Jones and advertising and it's Emory Jones, then you got the right to do that. So it hasn't been a big deal, but I think it's an emerging thing. And I think a lot of it is still on the education aspect as to what happens. The difference between college and pros, and obviously I was in the pro side for years, is that if a company wants to do a deal with LeBron James, well, you know what? You know that you've got a long runway. You can do a deal with LeBron James, that could be 10 years or 15 years, or in the case of him, 19 years, if that's the case. In college, you're looking at a
very short runway. Yeah.
So there's still the aspect of being associated with the team, but I think there's going to be those opportunities on a big basis for the Trevor Lawrences of the world, for those people that are the Heisman candidates and stuff like that. But we're going to see what happens, Rick. But I think that we're interested and we're on top of. But it hasn't been a disruptor, I can say, for the Gators at this particular point. Interested, curious, whatever we would want to do and however we would want to fit in. But at this point, nobody with the Gators has done anything big where it's caused any big heartburn to anybody at this particular point.
Well, I'll make a comment and an opinion. The comment is I still think the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name of the back of the jersey for brands like the Florida Gators. And in my opinion is I think you, having worked in the professional space, probably brought great wisdom into the organization, saying, "Hey, don't panic here. I've seen this movie. We're going to be just fine." and athletes are going to be just fine. One of the things that I do worry about is, athletes, what they do as a freshman or as a sophomore in college will be with them for the rest of their lives because of the longevity of social media and all this kind of stuff. We do a lot of work in the bowl business, and we've told all the bowl games that a really smart thing to do would be to go to the two teams that are coming to your bowl game and spread the wealth around. Give every player a couple of $100 and say, hey, just post on your social sites, hey, we're thrilled to be coming to the Gator Bowl, or we're thrilled to be coming to the Outback Bowl, or whatever from that standpoint. So I think there's going to be ways that we can all utilize it to grow the ecosystem. But it is strange with the different laws out there right now. And, and you combine that with transfer portal. My only concern is, are we going to abuse it? Are you going to tell a quarterback at one school, transfer to my school, and, oh, by the way, there's a car dealer that's going to pay you a whole lot of money? And so I think there's still a bunch of unknowns, around that. I want to close with one final question. What have you not done at Florida that you still would like to do?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question. I don't know that there's anything on the bucket list. I'll tell you this. I just enjoy the dynamics of our industry. When I came here, obviously things like Facebook and stuff were emerging, and we've seen all the different platforms there. But now, the social integration and the data mining and what you can do from that. I just want to get Florida and maintain Florida in the elite in our side of the business, things that I can control. So, when we're talking about the great properties around and do a great job, not only for my company, but first and foremost, and I tell my company this, I view myself as an obligation back to the Florida Gators before and at a higher level than I do to Learfield. I want to represent the brand. I want to generate the revenue that the school expects as well as the company expects, and do that. And in order to do that, Rick, I've just got to stay young, informed, and relevant because our world changes at a very, very fast pace.
No, there's no question that it does. You've done a great job. I mean, it's one of the premier programs in the country, and I think a lot of it has to do with your leadership. And listen, pal, I really appreciate you taking some time today to be with us from the bridge.
Well, Rick, my pleasure, and kudos to you for what you do. You're terrific in this industry, and one in which I admire and will continue to for a number of years.
All right, thanks, pal. Look forward to seeing you soon. See you, buddy.
Got it.
We started the show today talking about communication. So let me jump back up on the old soapbox and ask this question. Is there any place in the media where I can just get the facts and not opinions? I'm just looking for a single place. See, there's a lot going on in the world, and I just need the facts, ma'am. That's a reference to Joe Friday. Of course, most of you don't remember who Joe Friday was. Just give me the facts as you know them without any spin, and let me be the judge of how to interpret those facts. I don't want your opinion. I don't need your opinion. In fact, I resent your opinion because I don't care what you think, but what you know. You all know I quote a lot from the gospel of Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy wrote a song called Mañana, where he reminds us that we all might end up being wrong. I need the media to be right. No, let me correct that. I need them to just be accurate. I'll determine if they're right. And that's just the facts from the soapbox. Let's close today's show with another spot on the road with Rick. I recently really got back on the road with an 11-day driving road trip from Dallas to Texarkana to Fayetteville to Little Rock to Alexandria in the middle of a tropical storm, to Lafayette, Louisiana, to Biloxi, to Jacksonville, to Gainesville, to home. Whew. But of course, I did manage to find some new places to eat along the road. What do you do when you're holed up in a Hampton Inn at the airport in Alexandria, Louisiana for 3 days and 2 nights while it rains cats and dogs? Well, you look for some real Louisiana food for sure. And I found it at Pamela's Bayou in a Bowl. They've got both Cajun and soul food, in most cases a combination of both. It's a buffet where you order a meat with 2 vegetables, and they serve it with a piece of cornbread and a slice of sheet cake. I ordered the classic red beans and rice, smoked sausage, plus green beans and broccoli casserole. They also had fried chicken, smothered chicken, pork chops, and several kinds of po' boys. But I had the red beans and rice. I hope y'all know the story of red beans and rice. It's a New Orleans institution largely served on Mondays. Now, why do you say Mondays? Well, because you had a ham on Sunday, and you ate the ham down to the ham hock. And then on Monday was laundry day. And so it was the day that you could put the beans and the ham hock on the stove for hours and hours and hours and leave it alone while you did the laundry. Make yourself some rice, you got yourself a great meal. These red beans and rice were as good as any I have ever had. So good and so filling that I didn't even bother to eat dinner that night. It's Pamela's Bayou in a Bowl in Alexandria, Louisiana, on the road with Rick. That's it for today. Thanks to Lee Douglas for a wonderful conversation. I hope you'll join us again next week as we complete our series on the 7 C's of new business success from the bridge.